I know it be, know it be, know it be, I know it be, know it be. I know it be, and I know it be, and I know it be Woetry, 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 Woetry. Boo, boo, it be Woetry, Woetry, and you call it poetry, poetry. And I know it's poetry, poetry, but to me it's Woetry, Woetry, Woetry. Woetry or poetry or poetry or poetry, 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 poetry. The motion's supposed to be poetry. The potion though is poetry, poetry, poetry. You know. Boo, what you gonna pick? Poetry, 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 a hoe or a tree, or it's poetry, poetry. But I know y'all call it poetry, but it's poetry, poetry. Hoe or a tree. Or which one are you gonna pick, boo? A hoe or a tree? It's poetry, 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 poetry. I know it's poetry. It's poetry. The motion sea is poetry. The ocean sea. The motion sea is emotion sea. As I do it, as I do it, as I do it, as I motion, as I motion. Is it gonna be a tree or is it gonna be a hole in the ocean? Oh, in the ocean. Oh, in the ocean. Oh, in the ocean. Poetry, 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 poetry. The poetry, the poetry. Please, boo, please, boo, boo, oh, boo, please, boo. Go with me, go with me through the motion sea. Motion sea as our motion be, motion be, motion be. This is what our motions be, oceans be, motions. As I flow through with poetry, poetry, oh, with me. Oh, with me, oh, boo, go with me, oh, with me, who with me, ooh, with me, do with me, oh, let's hold with me, oh, with you, oh, it be poetry, oh, it be, ooh, oh, it be, 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 you know it be poetry. Oh, although it be poetry, it still be whole. Behold, oh, it be, 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 oh, it be. You know it be, you know it be, you know it be, you know it be, you know it be. Oh, poetry, poetry, poetry. Boo, come on, go with me, go with me, go with me, hold with me, hold with me, hold with me, hold with me, know with me, know with me, know with me. Oh, go with me, go with me. Oh, with me, oh, with me, oh, with me, what with you, oh, with me, oh, with me, oh, with me. Boo, you know you, oh, with me, oh, with it, oh, with it, no, with it, oh, with me. Baby, I'm a poet through poetry. This is just poetry.